Good afternoon, everyone. It's very exciting to be here today, almost overwhelming. In fact, I will start with a disclaimer to kindly bear with me if I may be rusty or slow or stuck at times, but this is my first public speaking engagement in real life for over the past 18 months, so please bear with me. My presentation today aims at explaining why Malta. Over the past 2 years and a half, since we enacted our legislation in 2018, Malta Enterprise has received well over 50 applications for projects in medical cannabis. From these 56 applications, Malta Enterprise has approved 23. This means that 23 businesses, 23 facilities are currently setting up their operations in Malta. So what is it that has rendered Malta so attractive in order to be able to attract such companies to set up their facilities in Malta? Before I go into why, perhaps it would be useful to ask another question. Where is Malta? Malta is a very, very tiny island. We are only 500,000 people on the island. In summer, we go up to 0.6 million people because of a tourism influx. And we are located just between the southernmost tip of Italy and the North African bloc. So that is where Malta is. And this, I think, will give context to the kind of business model that we are attracting in Malta and also to the kind of market that we are speaking about when we talk of Malta. These are some of the USPs that have attracted companies and businesses to come set up their activities on our island. A stable economy, the fact that we have a very strong life sciences cluster, which is providing the foundations for the medical cannabis industry, a very clear legislative and regulatory framework when it comes to medical cannabis, a transparent and efficient application process, project implementation support, and finally, a very clear outlook on the vision that we have for this sector. Just a few words about the agency I represent. I come from Malta Enterprise. I had the investment promotion unit within Malta Enterprise. Malta Enterprise is the government's agency responsible for economic growth and development. So essentially, we have three functions. The first function is to conceive of new niches wherein we can grow our economy, identify and target foreign direct investment to set up their operations in Malta, and finally, assist businesses, both local and foreign, in order to remain competitive from our island. Our economy, year after year, has continued to grow. In fact, in 2021, our GDP ranks us fourth amongst the European 28 members. This is possible because our economy is very diversified, having an important manufacturing sector, but also some other very important sectors. This allows us to buffer any downturns and shockwaves. In fact, during the pandemic, in spite of Malta having been very hardly hit, because obviously tourism has been very highly affected, our manufacturing sector has remained very, very strong and not only continued its operations as in under normal circumstances, but most of our manufacturing companies are actually expanding. A note about our manufacturing industry. In Malta, we produce some very diverse products. In fact, not many of you would know, for instance, that if you are carrying an iPhone with you today, some of the chips that are in that iPhone are actually manufactured in Malta. If you are carrying banknotes in your wallet, there's a very big likelihood that they are printed in Malta by two of the major security printing companies, which are Crane Currency and Delaru, which are both operating from Malta. This is just to give you a bit of an understanding of how our economy is structured. The life sciences sector is a very strong one. In fact, In 2020, the pharmaceutical exports amounted for over 360 million euros worth of exports into the EU market. That is just to show you how the life sciences sector, it is not only a highly important one, but is the one that is providing the foundations for the medical cannabis sector. These are some of our other sectors which compose our economy, namely aviation and maritime, international education, as well as digital innovation. However, if we divulge further into the life sciences sector, we will see that in Malta we have a very healthy and consolidated cluster of pharmaceutical activities. In Malta, we have companies that are producing active pharmaceutical ingredient. We have companies that are producing solid oral dose and sterile formulations. We have companies that are operating testing and batch release facilities. And the cluster is so well consolidated that it has a very important ancillary industry around it. So, for instance, you will find that this cluster has a dedicated printing press where we print vignettes, labels, foils, and everything that the pharmaceutical industry requires. Also, we have dedicated engineering firms which provide the industry with precision tooling and also automation requirements. Obviously, all this means that when it came to the medical cannabis industry, we are highly set up, we have skilled people, we have skilled services that can already provide the medical cannabis industries with what they have been providing to a very healthy and pharmaceutical cluster. These are some of the companies, the pharmaceutical companies that we have in our pharma cluster. Pivotal to the success of the sector is the Malta Medicines Authority. The Malta Medicines Authority regulates all pharma activities in Malta, as well as medical devices. And since 2018, it has been also the regulator of the medical cannabis industry. The Malta Medicines Authority is highly reputed, is recognized by the European Medicines Agency, and it was one of the first 8 European agencies which was recognized also by the FDA. Further to this, the Malta Medicines Authority boasts a highly qualified and skilled inspectorate, which are able to do EU GMP inspections, not only in Malta, but also internationally. In fact, I am very proud to say that the Malta Medicines Authority have gone through inspections in Canada, at medical cannabis facilities accompanied by Health Canada, and they have also licensed facilities in Israel. These are some of our testimonials. This is Professor Anthony Warrant from Barts University. Queen's Mary of London have actually a medical school campus in Malta, and here he highlights the strategic location of Malta in between the African and the North and the Southern European continents. Obviously, this is a very important aspect, especially as North Africa starts regulating the cultivation of cannabis. Malta stands to gain in importance as biomass, which is obviously produced to the standards required by the medical industry, can be imported into Malta, and Malta cannot afford to have hectares of land allocated to cultivation because of our size. But it can definitely process biomass, which is coming from the North African continent, to produce a medical product of the highest quality standards to go into Europe. Our legislation is very clear. It is only 9 pages long. It speaks of what one can do without going into a lot of detail. Our legislation does not distinguish between THC and CBD, but rather it distinguishes by use. So in Malta, anyone can produce a medical product which is manufactured under pharmaceutical standards and which is distributed through GDP practice and dispensed upon a prescription. So that is what the legislation allows for. The legislation also allows for the use of cannabis for research purposes. Along with this legislation, there are 2 other texts, which are namely a subsidiary legislation which explains the fee structure for the licenses, and another accompanying document which goes into more details as to the guidelines and the standards of the industry. In Malta, a company, so whilst we're not encouraging cultivation because of our size, a company can nonetheless go all the way from seed to pharma. However, there are various restrictions when it comes to the cultivation. So cultivation is not allowed as a standalone process. It is only allowed as part of a manufacturing concern. So any cultivation has to take place on the same site where the manufacturing process is taking place. It has to be indoors and not visible from the street. So there are quite a number of restrictions when it comes to cultivation. This was a deliberate decision. It has two main reasons. One, which I have already explained, Malta is very, very small, so we cannot afford to have a large area dedicated to cultivation, as for instance, is the case with Portugal and Denmark. And also, since we wanted this to be specifically an evolution of the pharmaceutical sector, we decided that we want to concentrate more on the more highly value-adding activities. The process to apply for a license is very straightforward. It's a two-step process. The first step is submitting an application with Malta Enterprise for a letter of intent. The letter of intent is a green light that you can start, that you can proceed with the implementation of your project. We have quite a thorough evaluation process. We base our evaluation on three main criteria, namely the financial viability of the project, the expertise behind the project, and last but not least, a very scrutinous and thorough due diligence exercise. To this effect, we have rejected more applications than we have actually approved. Once a project has the green light from Malta Enterprise to proceed with implementation, one can then start working with the Medicines Authority, which is the regulator, to apply for a license. The license is again composed of two main licenses, which is the EU GMP license and the narcotics license. Presently, in Malta, we have two companies which have acquired the full license, namely ASG Limited, which is the Maltese representative of Afria, which has now merged with Tilray, and also Zenpharm. Zenpharm is the Maltese representative of the Canadian company Cannabis. These two companies are now fully licensed and can start with their manufacturing and exports. And hopefully, before the end of the year, we will see another handful of companies which will also be fully licensed from the Maltese jurisdiction. These are, let me go back. These are some of our partners. We're speaking about Materia, MPXI, Zenpharm, which is Cannabis, Alvid. There's also Panaxia. There's also Hoshi, which is represented in Malta. So we are very proud to have some of the major names represented on our island. Malta Enterprise is not only the gateway to implement your cannabis project, but it is also your partner in implementing your project. So at Malta Enterprise, the process does not stop at the moment of granting a letter of intent, but we support throughout the implementation of the project. How do we support? We support by being a strategic partner, facilitating discussions with other government entities. We support through allocation of space and premises. We support through financing, support measures. And finally, we also have research and development, as well as specific support for startup activities. Our outlook for the future, and this is where I conclude my presentation today. In the beginning, we started going for the big names. So we started looking for companies which had already established activities in the sector to come and set up their activities in Malta. Once we arrived at that target, we are now starting to add flavor and depth to our ecosystem, And we realized that to do this, we have to start looking at startups, young startup companies which come with innovative products, which come with great ideas, which come with an enthusiasm to undertake research and produce something which is different from what is available on the market at present. To that effect, we have approved of the first medical cannabis accelerator in Europe, which is Tech4Can. Tech4Can is run by two very enthusiastic women who will surely help us in our endeavor to attract startup activities and startup talent. We have also designed a support measure specifically for startup activities. And we are also working on having a startup visa specifically for startup companies. Apart from this, I am very proud to announce that in fall this year, we will be collaborating with one of the topmost ranked universities, McGill University from Canada, and we will be offering a short course in medical cannabis through a collaboration between us and McGill University. Also, last but not least, our government this March, has published a white paper which is entitled Towards the Strengthening of the Legal Framework on the Responsible Use of Cannabis. This white paper is about decriminalizing adult use. However, it also mentions two important aspects, which is the scheduling of CBD, as well as including a threshold of THC content when it comes to CBD products. So as Bedrocan CEO, Mr. Challing Erkelen, started off in the beginning, whilst we are looking at decriminalization and allowing adult use, I fully agree with him in that we have to be very careful. We have to go this through a very careful and slow process and ensuring that medical cannabis remains a priority for patients and not allowing that adult use in any way slows down the access of medical cannabis to patients. This was my presentation today. I hope I didn't bore you and that you found it interesting. I'll be at the round table as well, so if you have any questions, we can have them there. Thank you.